smoke drugs, but I wouldn't listen. Never thought I'd get caught and wind up in prison. Chalk it up to youth, but young age I ain't dissing. I guess I just had to get it out of my system, out of my system, out of my system.
All right, welcome to another episode of Uncarcerated. We have a full episode today. The entire crew is here. We just did, Julius and I did a road trip, so we had a bunch of mini episodes where we interviewed Represent Justice ambassadors and filmmakers. Julius and I took a trek to Montgomery, did an episode about that at the Equal Justice Initiative Legacy Museum, and Kevin has just gone on a field trip of his own to the Pacific Northwest. He's gone to the great Pacific Northwest. But the entire crew is back today. So, fellas, introduce yourselves.
I'm Kevin Scott.
Hi.
Thanks.
No relation.
Good job.
Thank you. That's it. See you next time.
Yeah, I'm Chris Perry.
I'm Julius Irvin. Julius the Great.
An unbelievable guest today. We're going to jump into talking to the amazing Chris Perry, who's currently a fellow at Community Spring. But first, anything over the last few weeks jump out for you guys? Kevin, how was your trip?
Yeah, we went to Seattle just for a little break, a little vacation. Weather could not have been better.
No one's ever said that about Seattle.
I know, yeah. It was like extra good. It was like cool and clear and just like a nice like breeze and sunny. It's fucking crazy. I mean, there's like ocean and mountains and forest all kind of in the same eye line, you know? It's like kind of like hard to comprehend, especially coming from fucking flatland Florida. It was like extra appealing. I loved it. The coffee was good. The food was good. It was a good time. It was awesome. Yeah, it was hard to come home.
Well, we're glad you're back.
Yeah.
Show's not the same without you. Actually, it's much better without you, but
Touche.
It's neither here nor there. Julius, how's your adjustment coming back after a big trip? I know it's hard for me to like come back to a pile of work and come back to hot-ass Florida. What's your journey home been like?
Okay, so it's like levels to it for me. You know, whenever I leave, right, no matter where I go visit, eventually I start missing home. But I think for me, home isn't necessarily, I don't want to make it sound like I don't love Gainesville, because I love the Gainesville community. I love my hometown. But it's like, I really be missing like my actual apartment, my bed, you know, my fiance.
Your nest?
yeah, my nest. But it's something special about, for me, traveling other places, seeing other things. It puts Gainesville on like a different perspective. When I get back, I can see things a little bit more clearly. Mm-hmm. But it's like that window of change perception only lasts so long. You know what I'm saying? It's like once I start getting back into the groove of things, I have to fight harder to maintain that perception. Yeah, I feel pretty good being back. The road trip was fire. I didn't know that you know so much about music. I listened to the whole Pink Floyd album.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Julius is trying to go to sleep, and I'm like, you need to listen to all of Dark Side of the Moon.
Wow. Okay.
We had a good time.
And I also found out, right, that Lee I've been knew that Lee was a very peaceful person, but this motherfucker got road rage. Some of the most peaceful people are different behind the wheel.
I am the worst version of myself when I'm in the car.
I say that all same. I like if you could record me in a car, you'd never talk to me again. I am fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. It's my worst moment by a lot.
People have no idea what I'm saying about them in their cars. Some stuff irritates me. But my goal was to get Julius home safely and make sure, you know, when you take a friend to a trip, like on a trip or to a concert or whatever, you want them to have a good time, because if it sucked, it's like your fault, you know? So the entire time I wanted Julius to have a good time. So yeah, I felt like it was part educational, part just like relaxing and having fun, but it was awesome having the podcast equipment with us the whole time too. So, all right, so we're going to jump into our interview today. Of course, Uncarcerated is the podcast where we platform formerly incarcerated people, systems impacted people, the change makers working to shift the narrative. You can follow us now. You can go to our link tree and follow us everywhere. We're on Substack, Spotify, Apple. So make sure you go follow, like, subscribe, download. We can't tell if you're listening unless you give us some feedback and follow the show. And these stories are super important. We want to get them out to as many people as possible, because I think the system counts on us being silent, whether it's prison or homelessness, mental health, substance use, those sort of 4 buckets. People get past those experiences and they never want to talk about them again. So, and the system counts on that, whether you work at a prison, whether you work at a rehab, a homeless shelter, you count on people not talking about their experience. So that's what this show is about pushing back against that. And one person who's done that astutely, like from the moment he came home, he was looking to be involved in his community. I was one of the first people that he talked to. He came to where I was working, and you can instantly tell this person has something special about them, and should not have been in a cage. It's hard coming home. If you come home, you just get a job washing dishes, great. That's enough. So for the people that turn around and say, I'm going to talk about my experience, I'm going to try to make other people's experiences better, those people are special. And we have one of them here today, Chris Perry.
It's been quite a journey. Coming home, the last couple of weeks been really exciting. The last couple of weeks been really, really exciting. Been working on commissary reform. I was dealing with a lot of mental and emotional pressure. Having to walk into spaces that I never occupied before. You know what I mean? But representing a certain demographic was like really, really new. Then again, not really knowing what to expect, not really knowing whether or not I had what it takes after having gone through the things that I've been through.
Yeah, before we jump in and get to know you as a person, I do want to talk about that a little bit, because everyone in here has had that experience of someone with lived experience, someone who's formerly incarcerated, being in a space with academics, or as a black man being in predominantly white spaces. You are the expert in the room, but there still is that feeling of like, imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? What are these people thinking about me? Can you talk about, trying to get something accomplished and also like walking around with that? And what do you do to release that, if anything?
For me, it's kind of like facing things head on, which is what I've always done, but just in a different demographic. But I have this amazing coworker named Kelly Lynch, and she pushes me to the max. And whenever I'm dealing with, I wouldn't say I deal with imposter syndrome to that extent. It's more of a fear of the unknown, not really knowing whether or not I possess what's necessary to tackle these issues. What she does is whenever I bring things to her attention, whatever I'm dealing with emotionally or mentally, or when I'm viewing things from, I would say, a negative perspective or doubting, she just reassures me of what she saw in me day one.
It's so important for us to have people around us that are supportive, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to speak to some of that as well, right? For me, it's like imposter syndrome. I have you thinking you're not capable or qualified to do the thing while you're actually doing the thing. You know what I'm saying? You'll be actually doing the thing and doing it at a high level, right? And everybody around you is perceiving what you're doing like, damn, this is some good stuff. But you yourself would be thinking, damn, I'm not good enough. Did I sound right? Oh, I stuttered here. And you know what I'm saying? And then, me being a black man, me looking like my past. Everybody has a past, but not many people still look like their past. You see what I'm saying? I got tattoos, gold teeth, teardrops on my face and all of this stuff. So, no matter what interchanges I make, a person can look at me before they get to know me and still see the reflections of my past, right? I've come to realize that there is no certain look to intelligence. And the interesting part about being a black man, right? I could walk into an all-white room sometimes with no sign saying that I needed to change, right? But when I walk into that room, I feel like, I can't be my authentic self right now. I don't want to be misread or misjudged. And I've also seen white people come into an all-black space and don't feel that same pressure. Yep. You know what I'm saying? They don't come in there and code switch. They still be the authentic self. I think that the more that we tap in with ourselves, accept ourselves, and love ourselves, the more that we can, just keep putting out powerful representation of ourselves, our demographic. We just got to bring our authentic selves to the space, and that's what I appreciate about Chris, because Chris has always been this person that he is now. It's not like he's just become this great person. I can recall talking to him from prison while he was still in prison. He was encouraging us out here. You see what I'm saying? I would get phone calls from him and be really inspired. I watched him mentor a close friend of mine for 5 years from behind those walls. You know what I'm saying? He had enough positive things happening inside and in his mind to share with us out here. So I always appreciate that about him. And I can recall talking to him at the barbershop from prison saying like, bro, man, I can't wait for you to come home. oh man, you got to come up here to Community Spring, man. I promise you're gonna be the next fellow, man. You're gonna be at work, and it's just cool to me to see him get out and do just that and go above and beyond what I only have the highest thoughts of him. But I just been really impressed watching him do his thing.
Now that Julius has so eloquently explained and defined what imposter syndrome is, I guess that's exactly what I was experiencing.
I'm going to backtrack on that. That's actually what I was experiencing. Yeah.
You were saying, like, I don't know if I possess what's necessary in this room. Like, you are the only person who possesses what's necessary in those rooms. You know what I mean? Like, you are absolutely the expert. I probably met you, I guess, like, shortly after you came home. Wait, how long have you been home now?
Since November 7th.
7 months, something like that. I guess I met you maybe shortly after. The first time we overlapped, at least. And maybe it's kind of like what Julius was saying. Like, you just, like, had this undeniable way about you, some sort of, like, presence or, like, something. There's some sort of, like, radiance or magnetism, something that you definitely embody. I would love to hear, like, maybe, I don't know, like, how you came to be, like, the backstory, how you have come to be the Chris Perry today. Obviously, you're a different person today than you were at certain points in your life, but I'd love to hear, like, background, like, kind of how you came up and what happened.
But first I want to respond to what you just said. It's kind of like people seeing something in you, and you're hearing it from so many different places, and you want to be that thing and not knowing that you already are. You know what I mean? Seeking to have what they're saying and what they're seeing, and seeking to possess those tools, but already having them. And it's kind of like having to learn to operate in what you already are, and fighting against trying to fit into a narrative and just being the positive narrative that you are.
Facts. I definitely feel you on that, bro. Like, for me, right, I use the bad in my life to fuel me to go toward the more positive area. So I'm always mentally connected with the troublesome past. So sometimes when people have these positive reflections of me, it doesn't always hit and stick the way that I would like for it to, because I know all of me. You see what I'm saying? I know all of me. I know what you see, but I also know what I've been too. So I think sometimes I don't always feel like what people say that I am, you know. I think that in this work, it's not something that you do, it's something that you become. You can't do the kind of work that we do and then still have like a super good impact, you know, because if it's something you're just doing, it's like a job, and you become like some of these other agencies change, you know, passionate people, just clocking in, you know, going through the formalities. But when you do it to the level that you do it to a certain level, you go beyond doing, you just become.
I also think that you guys touched on this a little bit, that, you know, you've always had these qualities. And one thing I always actively try to push back against is the redemption narrative that gets pasted on us, that we were bad, we went to a cage, now we are good. I was in prison. People were who they were. And I came across the majority good people. If you gave them a few minutes, if you talked to them, if you dug in a little deeper, you met the most creative, artistic, funny, insightful, self-aware people, way more than out here in the free world. And, you know, it wasn't that, like, I was bad and then now I am good. It's just that I needed some doors opened. I needed some opportunities. I needed support. I needed resources, care. Once those came into my life, then I could, you know, self-actualize and be my full self.
Yeah, I think Kevin asked a very, very powerful question.
That rarely happens.
That was an accident.
And it's like, how did I come to be? It's been an amazing journey, but as a kid, I grew up in poverty. Me and 11 other siblings. In a single-parent household, 5-bedroom.
Gainesville?
No, it was in Tampa, Florida. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Stayed in South Carolina until I was like 6 years old, and then I moved to Tampa, Florida. We lived with my aunt for a little while. That was really, really chaotic because I didn't know there was more people like my siblings on the earth. we moved out in 1979, kind of 80-ish. We moved over to Central Park, and, you know, that's when we got the 5-bedroom, concrete everywhere. It was amazing because I'd never experienced that, you know, we just being around a whole bunch of concrete, because in South Carolina we lived in a wood house, you know. But then it was a lot of violence inside the home. So it was kind of like a psychological, social norm. I was always able to seclude myself. Me and my sister Rose, we would always seclude ourselves, and we spent a lot of time together just talking about thinking about these different professions. And I was really, really hyper focused on education. I was really good in school. The poverty mindset create other conditions that's not conducive for the growth of a child. So it's like a seed being planted in soil. That seed's ability to grow is solely dependent upon the soil that it's been planted in. There was nothing for me to draw from in my community except me and my sister. You know what I mean? Those conversations that two kids are having. There's chaos inside the home. There's chaos outside of the home. So then, we were very poor. So I had one pair of shoes. We had to spare a green and white Adidas, well, white and green Adidas. And me and my sister Rose, we would share those shoes. You know what I mean? We had gotten to the point where we would go downtown at this place called the Red, White, and Blue, and we would find clothes in the dumpster, whatever, find different toys. I would just, try to recreate my room. So me making the best out of poverty. But then something entered into my life that changed the dynamic of who I was. I was super hyper-focused on education. I was a nonviolent kid, almost, I would say, a straight-A student. But then I started getting bullied. The bullying just caused me to morph into something that I wasn't. Once I used to run home every day, just running home from school. Once I started fighting back, it changed my life. When violence entered into my heart, man, and the willingness to hurt another human being, psychological and social norm that was in my house and that was in the community became a part of me.
Do you feel like that switch that got flipped, was there some element of power and control there, that like you're in a home where you're out of control of so much, there's so much chaos, but now being able to defend yourself, that like you've taken some control back of how this is going to go?
Yes, to some extent it was, taking back control, and that was only short-lived in all actuality, because I purposed, it wasn't something that I said I'm gonna do. It was just like psychologically I became a bully to the bullies. I became a defender of the weak, and that caused me to morph into something else. See, in those communities, being economically deprived, man, people create other opportunities, and other opportunities are presented to them. Most of those opportunities are presented from the outside, but you never know the hands that's really moving all these mechanisms, and you just look at it as something that's going on in the hood. But really, there are governmental entities that are causing this thing to perpetuate so that they can increase mass incarceration even then,
Yep.
And looking back at it in hindsight, I see exactly what it was. But I remember being 11 years old, and I went to visit my sister. And she had a boyfriend that was snorting, cocaine. And he would always be short on the light bill money. That was his only bill he had. And he came up with a bright idea. He's going to teach me how to sell cocaine at 11 years old. And that way, at the end of the month, he would have the money. And that happened. I was successful at doing it, but it transformed me into someone else also, because now I'm selling drugs at 11 years old, hanging out with crackheads and prostitutes, When that was over, I ended up moving back to Gainesville, coming to Gainesville with my mom. But I had got introduced to something, selling and making money. So I started selling candy in school. I tried to morph back into focusing on my education, but it was really, really hard because the violence was still following me. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I would try to stay away from it, but in other instances, I would kind of like create the opportunity. You know what I mean? Long story short, I ended up getting kicked out of school, and I pulled the trigger the first time at the age of 13. And that was a norm, because when that happened, and selling drugs at the age of 13, I morphed into something else, because now the little kid who never had any fame or notoriety, in essence, what happened was that gave me an identity.
It became your identity.
It became
instead of who you actually were.
It became my identity. Yes, it became my identity. I started going in and out of the system.
It just breaks my heart to think that a little boy who has dreams and aspirations gets that yanked away from him, and instead of focusing our attention upstream at like, what opportunities should we be presenting to give care and support to a little kid, the focus is downstream on what you did and how you have to be punished now. So now you're introduced to coming in and out of the system. And what was that experience?
There were no conversations when I was coming in and out of the system, even when I was growing up, about being a doctor or a lawyer or, college. Or, that conversation never entered the narrative, period. So I was never introduced to the idea of me being like another demographic. So when I go downtown and I see all these different people, when I go to the doctor and see these people, or when I go to any place, seeing any professional operating in a certain capacity, it never dawned on me that I could do that, because that
No one ever talked to you about it.
nobody ever talked to me about it. It was not a part of the conversation of my community. It was never, the only conversations I had pertaining to me being that had been buried, and those conversations were the ones that I had early on with my sister Rose. Other than that, it never entered the narrative.
At some point, those conversations just
They faded.
did
There was
fade.
no adult.
Dr. Perry.
Yeah.
Dr.
No.
Perry was never to be.
Never to be.
I see.
Never to be. It wasn't even possible. The thought never entered the narrative. You know what I mean? Never entered my mind.
Hey, bro, I just want to comment on that, right? Because it's like hearing certain parts of your story. It's like almost as if you're telling my story too, because we come from like the same kind of upbringing and demographics. Coming up as a child, I had so many dreams like that too. You know, I wanted to be an artist. I still know how to draw. I just really like to draw. I like to watch. I would lay in front of the TV, watch cartoons, and draw what I saw on TV. And there was no kind of conversations in my neighborhood, in my household, at my auntie's house, uncle's house about all of the things I could possibly do or become. I didn't have nobody to look at my artwork, with the exception of my art teacher at school. But other than that, you know, nobody cared about any of that stuff. Living at or below the poverty level in those kind of neighborhoods, it's like a dream killer. You see what I'm saying? You can, so many people out there have so many dreams early that they just scrap and say, you know what, I got to get some money. Get some money one way or another. So either they become a slave to the system, or they get indoctrinated with the what it takes to lead them into, you know, criminal activity and stuff like that, and start normalizing it. And then in our communities too, as far as our culture go, I was looking for something to aspire to be, right? Of somebody that looked like me, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't see it on TV. You know, I didn't grow up seeing no black superheroes, black doctors on TV, or none of that kind of stuff or whatever. And the only representation at that time of black people operating at a high level or being something great was either through entertainment or sports.
Yep.
Although black excellence existed in every area of life. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know it at the time, but it just wasn't shown to me. And the only other time that I ever saw black people operating at a high degree of efficiency was during Black History Month. And it was the same few stories, you know. Malcolm X had a dream and got shot for it. You know what I'm saying? Malcolm X said, "My name is necessary." He got shot for it. Rosa Parks, you know what I'm saying? Just the same repetitive stories, but it was so many more out there. Once I was able to, I think that in the school system, the most important thing that you actually learn is basic math and reading with comprehension. After that point, you can teach yourself whatever you want to learn, you know, but everything else is kind of like indoctrination. You know, American history and black history get taught as two separate things.
Yeah.
You know, and then American history is like repackaging what they did in the nicest way possible. You see what I'm saying?
You know what's interesting to me is in the first 15 minutes of the show, you guys highlighted 30 different things where systemic racism exists. Classism exists. It's very real. Walking around being judged for not who you are, but what you look like, to not having opportunities presented, to no adult in the room laying out a path for you. And so when I hear people say, oh, well, that racism was in the past, we don't have to, let's not do DEI anymore, like, you know, it just angers me to no end that people don't understand the microaggressions and major aggressions that exist at every single level. I mean, we're talking about ripping a childhood away from you guys, and the system isn't designed to catch you and build you back up. It's designed to catch you, keep you in it, punish you, graduate you to a bigger jail, a bigger prison.
Growing up in that type of community, in that type of environment where there's nothing to aspire to be as a child, if you look at the way a child's mind is supposed to be nurtured, that's not happening. You know what I mean? That child is a vision is supposed to be cultivated in that child. And anywhere where that's not happening, that child is creating his own narrative, his own perspective of what he's supposed to morph into, you know, what he's supposed to grow into. He's responsible for cultivating himself, and the things that he's going to have to choose from in order to aspire to become something. He has to choose from what's around him, and everything's negative. And think about me, my own personal story, growing up in a house with all this chaos, and there's no father in the home. You know what I mean? There was nobody to pour anything into me except the community. So as to where this system pushed me into a different system. Being incarcerated, I saw kids being treated like animals. You know, I saw juvenile staff fighting against children, causing children to fight against one another, you know, and for candy bars. A different social norm. It was like the norm of my home being magnified in a place where correction and nurture was supposed to be able to take place. You know what I mean? I always thought that when I was incarcerated, I had a vision of it. First of all, I was kind of nervous about it at first, but I was willing to go to whatever extent it took to protect myself. Another side of me saw it as there is going to be some adults in here that's going to try to push me. You know, there's going to be some programs in here that's going to try to, you know, recalibrate my understanding of society. And that wasn't a reality, man. I'm seeing where, even in Alachua County Detention Center now, I'm seeing where it's not a healthy environment.
I can't believe it.
Huh?
Yeah,
No,
it's not.
You know,
Yeah,
it's not a healthy environment. But with me going in and out of the carceral system, it was very traumatic. It's a very traumatic experience. You know what I mean? Because what happened was I would go in there and I began to try to isolate myself on many instances. And I will say, to Lee's point, there were a lot of people that encountered me, and to your point, there were a lot of people that encountered me and said, "You're different. You got something." And there were people who would come to me for advice or whatever the case may be. And I found myself being incarcerated, but operating in a different capacity where I'm actually giving advice to my peers, to adults, you know, people much, much older than me. You understand me? And then I begin to realize that I'm surrounded by minds that had never been cultivated, just like myself.
Mm-hmm. What was your mindset each time about coming home? Did you have a plan? Did you have dreams? Or was it like, this is just a temporary pause till I have to come back here? What was your experience as you looked towards your future?
Okay, so that's a simple question, but it's a two-part question. Because there's one, my mindset, my focus was to do wrong the right way, get more dope, get more money, get more fame. You understand me? Even though I was experiencing certain, and it was a point of time where I was still experiencing, you know, nurturing other people, because there was a part of me that did that. But there was also a part of me that was focused on how to survive. And I only knew how to survive one way. Still, even as a teen and being around all these adults and being a pioneer, you know, and the trailblazer in the community, there was still a little kid inside screaming for something different. And the community still didn't have that to present to me. And not only that, I became one of the main sources of the dominant narrative. I was real violent, you know, just being transparent. I was very violent. But so it could be this guy over here in the community that's doing something for the kids, but then because I was so violent, whenever I do something for the kids, it was magnified. So I found myself being a drug dealer, but I would always, you know, pay people light bill, their rent, their car note. When you didn't have money to get your kids' school clothes, I would get the school clothes. I'm still remembering poverty, and I'm still helping people that are subject to what I grew up in, but I still didn't have anybody to guide me out of it. And I remember I met this older guy. He's deceased now. His name is Willie E. Smith. They called him Smitty. He was born 1928, April 28, 1928. He saw something in me. And that was the first time positivity really came into my life. And he began to speak to me about, you know, how people followed me, how people looked up to me. And he began to highlight and reiterate to me, because I was doing those things subconsciously when I was looking out for all these people, but he began to rehearse it to me. And I began to see myself in a different light. You know what I mean? He began to speak about the workforce and owning businesses and owning houses. And so then I started going to jail, and that was like a break from what I had morphed into, was a break from that constant negative cycle. And what happened was I began to hope for something different. You know what I mean? And I remember I took my girlfriend, my kid's mom, we went down to Main Street, and there was this older white guy we met. His name was Edwin. He had a car lot on Main Street, and I went and bought a car from him. I purchased the car. But then about a month later, 3 weeks to a month later, he called. I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, I need to see you. I purchased the car. And he was like, no, I need to see you. And when I went back down to Main Street to talk to him, he was just like, man, I see something in you. And he started telling me about his personal life and how he was a millionaire. He had multiple, you know, he had said he had like $5 or $8 million, you know what I mean? But he had lost everything through some investments. And then he was, at this time, he was, you know, back up to a little over $1 million. And he just started talking to me, man. And here's this kid still selling drugs, still trying to raise a family, trying to give my kids the family that I didn't have, you know what I mean? And I was going out to his house. He lived on a lakefront property out in Putnam Hall, and it was just me and my children. He allowed this little drug dealing kid to come into his house, and my children mingling with his children, and he's trying to cultivate me. So I met people like him over a period of time that caused me to take advantage of the breaks that I had when I was in the carceral system. And those things impacted me in such a way to where I desired something different, but I just didn't know how to get to it.
Mm. Yeah. So the first stage had happened. Like you wanted something different. You just didn't know how to get there.
I just didn't know how to get there.
You hear so many times too, we hear like somebody gets incarcerated and like the general public would think you're going to get presented with like programs and like all these things, like some magical fucking process is going to happen to somebody in that cage. That simply just does not exist. The things that were positive for you were coming from community, other people. It wasn't the system.
Yes.
Like these changes were starting to manifest in you, not with thanks to the system, but in spite of the system. It was other people that were like Smitty and these other folks that were like seeing something in you that were like providing a different possibility for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the day, we're going to get to that, but it's kind of like the day when I met you. I came to Community Spring, and after storytelling, I walked out. You, Kelly, and Shelly were standing there looking at me like I was some strange wild animal or something. So
I still see you the same way. Yeah.
But even that day, y'all saw something in me that I really didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, people think like there's something, I don't know, transformative happening in a jail or in a prison that just simply does not exist.
Well, it does exist.
I mean, not,
No. You're correct.
Yeah, the DOC is not creating these things.
You're correct.
Yeah.
It does exist. There is something transformative happening in jails, in juvenile detention centers, and in prisons. And that thing is called undiagnosed trauma.
Yeah.
That's
the program.
That's the thing that's happening, and you see it where, you go into jail and you see all these brutal acts, or you go to prison and you see all these brutal acts, and you see people being stabbed and airlifted out, and you got guards bringing in drugs to the inmates and all this, and somehow, these, you can look on the prison website, and this is real. You can. We were inside, and we were talking to people about the lack of opportunities in prison. Right? They said we were lying because the website said something different.
DOC's website and the programs they offer are totally different than what our experience is. When you dig in and you find out you couldn't go to this class because of your classification, you couldn't go to this program because of the dorm you were in. Oh, guess what? Y'all are getting shook down today, so this class is canceled. We don't have someone to teach this class, so it doesn't happen anymore. This idea that like these amazing programs are happening either in jail or prison.
In a class I got a cabinet
the
making
woodworking
certificate.
class.
Really?
Yeah,
but I never learned how to build a fucking cabinet.
Oh wow!
But I got the paper.
yeah. I went to architectural drafting. I can't draw to save my life. I just went in there all day and did sports gambling. That's all I did.
Yeah.
There was no one teaching the class.
And they're seeing all this violence and the stabbings, and not only are you being traumatized in that way, you have your food is provided. You don't have a light bill. You're living rent free. Someone is doing your laundry or whatever. So you become dependent upon a system that's psychologically destroying you. The only way that you can actually get help for your trauma or get diagnosed for your trauma is if you have a major episode. And most people don't have a major episode. So they come home with that undiagnosed trauma, and they expect it to operate as normal, functional members of society.
Thank God. One thing real quick, but here's the thing about having a major episode and having a record, though. When you have a major episode and you have a criminal record, it doesn't always get perceived as a mental mental health crisis or trauma, it just gets perceived as more criminal activity sometimes. You get what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like coming from certain demographics, having a certain kind of background, and you have an episode that comes from the undiagnosed trauma. Sometimes it doesn't even get viewed that kind of way, though. You see what I'm saying? Most times they get viewed as just another criminal activity, or as a result of
You go to the
drugs
box,
you was using
right.
or something like that. They don't handle it as a mental health crisis.
It's not handled in a therapeutic way.
At all. What typically happens when you have an episode and you come from a certain demographic and you have certain things in your background, you get put in a situation that adds more trauma to the already undiagnosed trauma inside of you.
Absolutely.
And Julius, it's the same way out here. You know, in us advocating for alternative first responders, if I call 911 or 988 and I'm in the white community and I'm saying I'm having a mental health episode, that's a wellness check.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to get a crisis center mobile response team. I'm going to get a paramedicine program. If I have a substance use or mental health crisis in the black community, I'm getting the cops. So I want to keep on this topic for just a sec about undiagnosed trauma, because I think we normalize the jail and prison experience. While you're inside, you have to normalize it. You know, you make a goulash with your buddies, you get on the poker table,
Not the
you
goulash.
you try to get through it as best you can. It's not normal. It's not a normal experience. There's constant trauma happening.
And yeah, you have the goulashes. You have different people that you connect with. You have different gang settings. You're constantly, it's a very, very intense situation for a lot of people. You have the violence. You have the drugs. People are constantly being airlifted out of there. You know, you're constantly seeing blood. I remember every 2 to 3 days as I'm going to chow, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, I'm following a fresh trail of blood. I can even remember one of the most horrific experiences. This older gentleman, he used to buy a lot of commissary. Every time they called, for commissary, he would go outside, but he would put a whole bunch of bags up under his bed, and for some reason they let him do it. But he ended up going up front one day. He had a seizure, and the officers thought that he he was twacking out. He was just, and they took him up front, and they slammed him on his head, but his head hit the corner of corner of the table. And he ended up dying, and they wanted the officers to, this was a very traumatic experience for me, because I used to talk to the old dude every opportunity I got, and they wanted the nurses to sign him out so that they can take him back to confinement. The nurse was like, no, I'm not going to be a part of that, and she literally walked off the compound. She quit her job and left. Anyway, I saw the hearse back up to the confinement door because they got him around there, and they picked up his body and left. And I remember as we were going to chow, the investigating officers, the one who was supposed to be investigating these officers, he's standing in center gate and he's telling them what to say in court and how to write the paperwork up. And I remember that moment, man. It was like, I'm defenseless. I'm actually defenseless in this moment. The only thing that I can actually do is go till I die, And you could just imagine, I wasn't one of I never got stabbed in prison. I didn't even have a fight, you know what I mean? But just being in that type of environment and watching these guys go through these bloody events, man, you have to look at, if it's undiagnosed trauma, no one ever deals with their mind. No one ever brings them back and helps them to cultivate a social and psychological norm. These are the same people that are going to be expected to go out into society and to be functional members of society, having never been diagnosed, having never been treated, and having never been taught. But even more so, when we watch generational trauma, these guys are sons, they're uncles, they're fathers, and these people are going to go out in society, and there's already people waiting on them to come fill a role. And not understanding what they're going to bring into the environment, not understanding what's going on in their psychological environment, and not understanding what they're imputing into their children.
Look at all the programs we have for veterans when they come home from war. When veterans come home from war, there's I work in homeless services, so I work with homeless families. And there's infinitely more programs for veterans than there are for families. There's no programs to address the psychological trauma that you experience in prison. We are not treated the same way, but it very much is the same experience as going to war.
And it is. And, I just thought about it. It's kind of like I was growing up. I just had to try to create this psychological norm. That's exactly what they're doing with much more intense subconscious experiences.
I was just talking about this the other day, right? You think about a child raised up in a neighborhood, never got validated, never got told that it's possible for you to be something other than what you see around you, right? And then you think about the consistency of a message, right? Because consistency overrules, hope and ambition sometimes, because you can have hope and ambition in your mind, right? But there's a consistent messaging that, hey, it's not possible. I haven't seen it happen for anybody that came from my space or whatever. So you take a child like that, right? Then when you start listening to certain types of music that's speaking about your culture, quote unquote, hip hop and rap music has become so destructive, right? And then you watch all of the gangster movies, you watch the Boys in the Hood, you watch the South Central, all of these movies that's reflective of black life in other places, right? They're not showing you the full picture. Just this one narrative gets beat over and over and over and over again, right? And they give you these charismatic people out of these movies. I want to be like Doughboy. I want to be like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have these things, right? Then you go to prison. Then something happens and you end up going to prison, and the state has you for 5 years consistently, 6 years consistently. You're getting programmed while you're in there. You see what I'm saying? Like, when I went to prison for a VOP on a drug charge, right? I only did a year and a day in prison, but I came home with a chip on my shoulder that wasn't there when I went in, and it got put on there by the system. When I came home, if you asked me, where you about to go, it would piss me off, because I'd be like, motherfucker, I'm free. I can go where the fuck I want to go. Don't ask me no shit like that. I'm going outside. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that on me before I went in prison. Being there, being treated the way that I was treated for that long period of time, and there was nothing to address what I had gone through when I got out. And something that you said, right? It's people at home waiting for us to come and fill the role, but not understanding the role that we need them to fill for us. A role that we never had even filled in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and then also too, it can just be so trying to figure out, dang, who am I? What do I want to be? But still having to live to the idea of what an uncle's supposed to be, of what I'm supposed to be for my mom, what I'm supposed to be for these people, but what are y'all supposed to be for me? It's something that I never really got around to even thinking about, because I thought I had to be all of these things for you all and still try to be something for myself. So, and then also too, it's tough for the person dealing with undiagnosed trauma, trying to understand it themselves, because trauma doesn't make sense. Feelings don't always make sense, and you're trying to figure out, like, why is this so hard for me? Why did it matter to me 2 weeks ago, but now nothing matters? You see what I'm saying? Why am I not happy? I'm sitting here around family and friends. I just don't understand why I'm not happy. I just don't. So and then sometimes we don't even have the space or the time to really sit with self to process these inner feelings, these inner thoughts, and we just start getting busy, and sometimes you can find yourself attached to a job and you get so busy and everything's going good, but if that job slow down, then those old feelings creep back up of what's going on or whatever. And I can recall, like, understanding I had PTSD or was having flashbacks, I'd literally be on a line, on a cook line, on the fry line, because that was my go-to job that I could get hired at. It was a step above fast food, paid a little more money. I'd be on the fry line cooking, but I recognized I'd be right here looking at the fucking chicken, but my mind was somewhere 10 years ago, reliving the experience I had, and it gave me a physical feeling in my body as if I was still there, and I just had to shake it off real quick, and then, oh yeah, I'm cooking chicken. I had no idea, because I had never consulted with a mental health professional to understand that, hey, that's actually something, that's a sign of this, a sign of that, and I always would punish myself too for not being regular, or not feeling regular, or wondering, damn, what the fuck is wrong with me? You see what I'm saying? Never talk to nobody, because if I talk to you might say I'm crazy, or you may say I'm weak, or you may say, man, your big soft ass, get up out of here, man. You 6'4", you ain't scared. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the shame that goes with, this is what society tells me. I did something wrong. I had to be punished for it. I went to a cage. Any trauma that I experienced there was still my fault because I put myself there. So then I come home. There's not a lot of systems. There's no blood test that can show you complex PTSD. There's no CT scan that can show my trauma, right? So, like, even our medical and healthcare and mental health care system is not built for trauma. It's built for bipolar, it's built for schizophrenia, take this pill, go away, I don't want to talk to you. And no doctor, nobody with their master's degree has the experience that we had inside there. So nothing is built to support us when we come home. And that just like doubles down on the shame. Like, I shouldn't even talk about this because no one's going to understand what I went through, you know. And I find it showing up in my life in so many little ways, you know. I don't want to eat with like 10 people, you know. I don't like group dinners. I eat real fast, right? It's weird. I have all these little weird things I do. You know, when I'm in a car, I need to be driving. I don't want to be the passenger in a car. Like, all these little things. I could go on and on and on that I have to deal with every day. And if I had those experiences because I was, you know, I grew up in a wealthy home and I was bipolar, I would get support for it. But because I had these experiences because I did something wrrong and I am bad, you know, I just have to deal with it.
I think, to your point, you and Julius's point, there are a lot of people walking around in fear. They want to expose a certain side of themselves, but in a certain demographic, it's viewed as weak. You understand me? So you have a bunch of people walking around with this mask on, pretending to be something that they're not, wanting to take the mask off, but not being able to because of how they may be perceived.
So I want to jump ahead to this last prison experience, Chris, and sort of what combination of like who you were, the hopes that you had now been presented with, what experience made this last one the last one, and then how did that sort of tie into your experience coming home and getting involved at Community Spring?
When I went to prison this last time, it was different. It was a lot different. I really delved into the Word of God, and something clicked. So I started dealing with a lot of people, man. It was just like, you know, I was heavy studying the Word of God, and I started writing. I learned, I had already written a book before I went to prison. And I started just writing down different schemes for books, right? And then they just started growing. And so I spent a lot of time to myself, and I invited people into my circle rather than me partaking in other people's circles and activities. And I remember there was this group, they called them the Kick Butt Crew, but they used another word for butt, of course. And it was this group of really racist white guys, man. They were just like beating people all across the compound. And there was an older white gentleman named Hillbilly. He was like, "Hey, Mr. Perry, I want you to come over to confinement." Where I said, "I'm working in the kitchen. I'm not coming to confinement." And so anyway, he taught me into coming, and I ended up going to confinement, and I began to minister to the guys who were in confinement, you know. And there was the Kick Butt Crew was there, you know what I mean? So I would kind of like minister, and I walk away from the door. But I noticed after a period of time that every time I would move, they would move. And I thought to myself, I said, these guys are watching me. So I would minister on the door a little longer, which is something that I'm not supposed to be doing, talking to another inmate. They will allow me to do it. And after a while, you know, to make a long story short, the Kick Butt Crew became my best supporters. They began to talk to me about their personal lives, how they were raised, their wives, their children, asking me to pray over certain dorms, having me to go out and pray with gang members. So I saw a whole different dynamic. Something was happening. You know what I mean? And
That's like a movie plot.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's great.
And I remember I had gotten so close with them to where we ended up taking inmates to another dorm, another side of the compound, right? That was unoccupied, but then the AC stopped working in confinement, so we went on the other side, and I found out from another inmate that this was their last night. Remember, these guys are ruthless, you know. And I walked in. I felt comfortable enough to do this. I walked in and I said, "Hey guys, how y'all doing?" I said, "I know I'm just an inmate." And they looked at me like, "What's wrong, Perry?" I said, "I know I'm just an inmate, man, but I just found out from somebody else that this is y'all last night, and y'all didn't tell me. And if you would have saw the sadness on their faces, they're like, 'We're so sorry, Perry. We should have told you. You want to just hang out with us for the night? We'll get you some chicken and eggs." And I saw that dynamic shift, right? And then I ended up getting shipped from that compound to another compound where I spent the remainder of my time. And it was at that compound that things really, really began to change, right? And I began to see myself in a different light. And just to make a long story short, I began to pray with officers over there. They were telling me about their personal lives, asking me to interpret dreams. There was this ruthless officer on the compound. They called him Self, Sergeant Self. He came to my dorm one day, and this is where the compound got shook, because when Self came, there was something going on. And they told me Sergeant Self wanted me, and I looked and I saw him. He had this crazy look on his face. So I went out the door, and he was like, Perry, you know Nurse Munoz? I said, yes, sir. And he was like, I need you to pray for us. I said, huh? I said, okay, yes, sir, I'll go in and pray for you. He grabbed my hands. And he was like, no, now, I need you to pray for us. And I prayed for him. And once I prayed with him, everybody, like the inmates were all looking out of the door, and they actually see me praying with Sergeant Self. You know what I mean? So I remember being in the chow hall, and Sergeant Self came and sat down at my table, which officers never sit at the table. And he had this other young lady standing by him, and he was like, Perry, he said, I was playing with my cell phone. No, he said, I was sitting on my bed, and my cell phone was right in front of me, and I normally spend a lot of time on my cell phone. He said, but this time my Bible that I hadn't touched in years was way on the other side of my cell phone. He said, do you know I reached across my cell phone and picked up my Bible? And he said his fiance asked him, what are you doing? What are you doing with the Bible? And he said, my mentor. And she said, your mentor? What are you talking about? He said, my mentor, Perry. And she said, Perry who? He said, Chris Perry. He said, inmate Perry. He said, Perry, I've got to tell you this. He said, before I met you, and before this night, I had not prayed since a Wednesday in 1994. Wow. And just the interactions on that compound, whenever they would have a crisis, or whenever someone lost a family member, or about to psych out, or whatever the case may be, they would call me to pray with them. And I began to see myself in a different light, you know? And so when I got out, I came out with a renewed sense of vigor, but I really didn't know how to embrace society. But I know I was going to face it in a different light and as a different person. I finally realized that I had something to give. I had more to give than I had been aware of, and I had more to give than I was willing to give before. You know, I think I entered into a place of selflessness that was inconceivable before. You know.
Can I ask you a question real quick, bro? I'm sorry to interrupt. Was there anything about your reentry this time that was different from the last times that made it more possible for you to be able to just cultivate that you that you know you've always been? Did becoming a part of Community Spring help you any, you know what I'm saying, with that transition or anything?
Don't try to get a plug in for Community Spring. Come on. You guys are the fucking worst, man. Just always trying to slip Community Spring in there.
Could you talk about how great we are for a while?
It was, well, that's a two-part question. I think for the most part, I knew that I wasn't. This time I came out with assurance. I came out with a confidence that previously, you know, this was unmatched. I knew that there was nothing behind me. And I came to a greater sense of awareness of who I was and what I had contributed to society. You know what I mean?
So you felt like that was like, I can't fail.
I can't fail. I remember, if I go back to a prison experience, there was this young guy, I'm not going to call his name. He was from Gainesville, and he had a first-degree murder charge. And I had never met him until, you know, this prison experience. And we were sitting there talking. He was telling me about how he caught the charge and everything. And he had came to Gainesville from Miami.
I know you're talking about. I know
he came to Gainesville from Miami, and as a kid, I was kind of like a household name in our community. You know what I mean? And not for any good reasons. Period. I remember this kid talking to me and telling me he had a life sentence, and I'm sitting there feeling so sorry for him. You know, that he had to experience that, and now his life is gone. And right before we got up out of the day room, he said, "Hey, what they call you?" And I said, "Chris." He said, "No, that what they call you on the streets." And I gave him the name that they called me on the streets. And he just, oh my God. He was shocked. He was like, I'm so glad to meet you. man, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, man, when I came to Gainesville, he said, man, I aspired to be you. He said, man, you influenced me, and I'm thinking about this kid has a life sentence, and I'm going home in a year and a half. And he's saying that I influenced him. I influenced him to be where he was, and that shook me to my core. I remember going back to my bunk and just laying there, man. I mean, I was in tears. That was a real moment, a real transformative moment. And it caused me to view influence in a different way. But also I wanted to position myself to be able to use my influence in a different way, because not only did I affect him, I affect many others, not only those that are in the community now, but many of those that are in prison and many of those that are in the grave. So I remember getting out, and I went over to Release Reentry. I met this guy named Lee.
Sounds terrible. Great. Perfect.
I met Lee, and we talked for a while, and it was very brief, but I just kind of knew I was in the right place, and he was very, very calm. You know, I mean, one of those people that just look you in your eyes and you can feel the compassion. You know, I can tell that he really, really cared. And as it was like he was telling me to go to Community Spring, but he said it like in slow motion. It was normal for him, but for me, it was like it was in slow motion. And so I went to Community Spring. You know, I took his advice. I went to storytelling. Community Spring is downtown Gainesville. Remember, as a kid, me and my sister used to go downtown. And beforehand, I never identified or could identify myself with those people operating downtown or any profession. But when I went to Community Spring, I was greeted. You know, it was like a very welcoming environment. For me, it was like people were kind of attentive. So I went to storytelling. I did the little storytelling event, and as I'm walking out of the door, right, I did speak. And as I'm walking out of the door, Kevin, Kelly, and Shelly were standing there. And they were like, would you like to be the next fellow? And I'm looking at them like, I've never heard of a fellow. And they told me what the position was or whatever. And I said, sure. They said, we're going to send your application. There's no guarantees, but X, Y, and Z, you know. I ended up getting the position as fellow Community Spring and coming downtown Gainesville to work. And I'm seeing now in hindsight how that dynamic played out, because coming out of the carceral system, being institutionalized to some degree, and having been living in a bubble to some degree to protect myself from the things that I had been around or exposed to, Community Spring was the perfect piece to the puzzle. It was an entity that embraced me. And I think the thing that shocked me most about Community Spring was the environment, the family-like environment that they had created in there. You know what I mean? So I was not only in downtown Gainesville working, you know what I mean, but I had a new sense of family.
I've had this experience in my life so many times now that I don't think it's coincidence, but I am often in the exact same place, but with a new mindset, or I'm meeting the exact same person, but I'm a different person now. It's like you're visiting the ghosts of your past, but you get a chance to do it over again, you know?
Absolutely.
And so that dynamic of like, oh, I was here, but my experience was different. I was in this bubble, and I could only see these people, these experiences, but now I'm in the exact same place, and I'm seeing this whole other thing, this whole other piece of the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was like an incubator for me, because remember, you remember I was talking about how my home wasn't as a child? Well, coming out of the carceral system and this aspiring to do something different, I needed to be nurtured. The environment of Community Spring was perfect because it provided me the nurturing, and it also gave me the exposure to things that I otherwise would not have been exposed to so rapidly, you know? And I have the opportunity to work with this amazing young lady named Kelly Lynch. And
The worst.
The worst?
The worst.
She is the worst. Hey, Chris, before we wrap up, I want to talk about the work that you're doing at Community Spring and the impact it's going to make. Because for those that don't know, Community Spring takes systems impacted people, and you go through a fellowship, and they let you design your own social justice campaign. So Kevin worked on Just Income, which is still doing amazing work to this day. I worked on Links Not Locked. Can you talk about this murky dark world that you've immersed yourself in of the commissary, how people are being taken advantage of inside by these predatory companies that are multi-billion-dollar investments into keeping people poor while they're inside and keeping their families poor who are pouring money into the commissary system.
That research is also something that I wasn't fully confident doing. When I delved into it, it was deep. It was definitely deep and dark, and I found out that the head of the commissary entity is a global investment firm called HIG, and somehow these heartless people found an entity that they could utilize to accomplish their goals, and those two entities was what's called Keith Commissary, Trinity. And what they did was, the last time Keith and Trinity reported was in 2012. They reported their income 2012 and 2016. This company, HIG, merged these two companies up under another company, which is a holding company called TKC Holdings. And up under TKC Holdings being a part of a global investment firm, they no longer have to report their income. So we can't even find out how much money they're making.
Holy shit.
Diabolical.
So
These are the real criminals. These are the real criminals.
Absolutely.
Not the guy who did drugs or stole a candy bar. These are the fucking criminals. And they'll never do prison time.
Never. And what they did was and I remember being in prison, and I was thinking that we were all thinking that because the commissary was switching from Keith to Trinity, we thought we were going to get lower prices.
Yeah, that good Keefy coffee.
Yeah.
Tastes like motor oil. Yeah. But what happens is they're allowed to function unregulated. Their sole purpose, their goal is to increase profits, but they have this people that are a captive market, and these individuals are eating from the chow hall with these things they call rat patties. You ever heard of rat patties?
Yep.
Yeah,
Delicious.
delicious.
My favorite.
But what happens is it pushes them to commissary. You know what I mean? And when they go over to commissary, they're spending these high prices in order to avoid the rat patties, because the rat patties cause cancer. A lot of the foods that are served in TVP, absolutely, and the lawsuits, the TVP lawsuits are very prevalent all over the country. They're not really taking advantage of the individuals that are incarcerated. It's their families and loved ones who desire to support them that are actually being taken advantage of. So we look at the amount of individuals that are incarcerated. The vast majority of them come from economically deprived community. They live in poverty, So here it is. My loved ones or the loved ones of individuals that are incarcerated are actually trying to support them from a poverty-stricken state. And by them allowing these entities, these commissary entities, to mark up the prices so high, they're actually sucking money out of these economically deprived communities. And they're costing families billions of dollars per year. Money that would have provided more food for their children. It would have money that would have allowed a parent to be home more.
Or to have a home, period.
To have a home, period.
Billions with a B.
Billions with
Billions
a B. Opportunity to actually be home with your children. Because when you look at it, whenever you have to do something extra in it, when you're already poverty stricken, whenever you have to gain extra money, it's going to cause you to have to come out of the home. Yep. And when you're out of the home, your children are now vulnerable. And I think that this entire system is designed to perpetuate poverty, crime, and mass incarceration.
Because then you have more customers.
Because then you have more customers. And I think the biggest atrocity is that they're taking advantage of the love that these poor people actually have for their loved ones.
It's heartbreaking. So, Chris, what is next for this project, and what is next for you?
Okay, so we're making headway here in Alachua County. My desire is to see this process through to where they've already made adjustments to the commissary in the Alachua County Jail. I'm looking forward to connecting with other organizations in Nevada and California, so that hopefully we can make some changes on the state level, because I'm thinking that with the work that we're doing here in Alachua County, we'll be able to speak to surrounding counties, ultimately to the state. You know what I mean? And once it speaks to the state, I think if it speaks loud enough, we can penetrate DOC.
Yeah, you're like making a playbook. You're like making a playbook, right?
Absolutely.
Now. Yeah,
Absolutely.
You're building the blueprint.
Yeah, because
Amazing.
because the other states that have done it, they've done it on a state level. You know what I mean? But we're doing it on a more personal level. You know what I mean? I think that it's more effective because we are able to specifically, be able to speak to these people specifically about protecting those in our community. You know what I mean? And when we can get them to shift their moral compass just a little, and if policy actually changes, in which it is changing, I think that we'll be able to just allow that thing to unfold and just spread organically into other places, and it'd be a lot easier because we'll already have created the prototype.
Amazing. Chris, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning and spending time with us and opening up about your experience.
I could listen to you talk all day.
Yeah, seriously.
Honestly, like
Yeah.
this episode
good.
is painfully short to
Yeah.
me. There was a couple of times when everyone was talking, I was like, I'm just so happy to be in this room, listening to people talk.
Yeah.
Well, just to go back to the beginning really quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Like in the very beginning, you were talking about like the seed and soil idea and how like the environment you were in just didn't have the necessary things. But there was never anything wrong with this seed. Like there's like this like seed of like limitless possibilities, and the soil just was so limited. Anyway, it's just
Wow,
really cool.
thank you.
It's just really cool to see the seed.
Yeah.
Now, like you're in a different environment, like you're kind of have these different conditions around you and resources available. It's just really amazing to see you flourishing, man. It's an honor to know you sincerely. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you. I
awesome.
really appreciate it,
As if
bro.
I didn't love you enough before we started talking. now it's even fucking more. It's crazy.
You know what feels the best
Amazing.
though? What really feels good? Me and Julia said the same thing this morning. It was kind of painful walking upstairs and not seeing you in that chair, man. He's back. He's back.
Baby, come back.
Chris, I can't wait to see what comes next out of this project, and then what you do beyond this fellowship as well. The world is, our community specifically, is lucky to have you in it. Thanks for joining
Very much
us.
so.
I gotta say this, man. Shout out to Kelly Lynch. She's an amazing person. Yeah, I got to. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, because there were times when I felt kind of, like I didn't fit the script, or that I not wanted to give up, but didn't really know what to do. And it's like she can look at me and just read me, and she would always say the right thing and push me in the right direction, man. So shout out to Kelly.
Yeah,
love her.
we
Let me give a
love
quick
her.
Shout out, I want to give a quick shout out. I want to shout out Shelly Seymour. I haven't talked to you recently, but I still think about you. I still believe in great things for you. I want to shout out Raymond Prophet. I want to shout out Michael Powers, Ozell Jones, and Jody Polk.
I love that we're doing shout outs. Next episode we're gonna do celebrity birthdays. All right. Go follow us at Uncarcerated Pod on Spotify, Apple. You can hit our link tree. And if you or a loved one has been affected by the system and you want to come on the show, email us uncarceratedpod@gmail.com. See you guys soon. Bye.
It was a fire.
I wouldn't listen, never thought I'd get caught and wind up in prison. Chalk it up to youth, but young age I ain't dissing. I guess I just had to get it out of my system, out of my system, out of my system.